All right, so chapter 3 is the Burrow, which I remember when I initially read this was one of my favorite chapters because it was just like I want to spend every minute that I can at the Burrow and just seeing all the descriptions and like meeting the Weasleys really for the first time. I mean, we've met them in the previous book, but this is like you actually spend some time with them. I loved everything about this chapter. But what did you guys think of this chapter? Chapter 2 or chapter 3, the Burrow?
Uh, I think that this chapter is cool because it's I, I think it's Harry gets to see that his friends actually care about him.
Yeah.
I think for the first couple of chapters, he's a little stressed about, is this was this all real in the first place? And then he finally, uh, his Ron and his brothers come to save him, and I think he's feels all that is right with the world after this chapter.
Mm,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like he finally like because he felt at home at Hogwarts, but never knew how like a family was supposed to feel.
mm,
So this, I mean, goodness sake, he's 12 years old before he sees what a real family should look like.
mm.
So other than his first year of life, which he doesn't really remember. So I think for him, it's just probably like every day is so wonderful
Mm.
and everything he sees is so cool because it's a magical home.
Yeah.
So he's seeing just all this stuff for the first time that is like, what? Oh, well, of course it makes sense, but you wouldn't think about it if you hadn't grown up in a mug or a wizard house.
Yeah.
So
And it always drove me crazy for this chapter. I know why she has to do it literally because like you have to have the darkness of the Dursleys before you get to like the Burrow and everything is so much better because you were at such misery before. But it always drove me a little crazy after this chapter that Harry doesn't go spend every waking hour. Obviously, we know why he doesn't because he has to go back to the Dursleys for like the protection of that being his home. But it drove me crazy that every summer he's got to go back to the Dursleys rather than just going straight to the Burrow, really where he belongs. It's like his real home. I mean, Hogwarts is his real home, but I'm like, to get away, even at the end of this chapter, he's like, he almost doesn't want to go. He loves the Burrow, and
mhm.
I it was so comforting.
It is. And it, like, what was it? Where the weirdest thing was that everyone seems to like him.
Yeah, yeah,
What?
and he was surprised about that. Yeah, that's got to be so. Yeah, it's such good writing. That line is one of my favorites because it really shows that Harry doesn't like know what to expect, and he thinks everyone kind of he's like a nuisance and annoying. And this is one of the first times he goes somewhere, and everyone in the house wants to get in a conversation with him. They want to talk to him, and he's definitely not used to that.
Mhm.
It's so sweet.
Yeah, I feel that hard because whenever I go, visit a friend's family or something, I always feel like I'm a nuisance when I'm around
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, oh, they gotta like cater to me, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the restaurant they go to, they gotta think about, oh, what is Kevin like, and
yeah.
all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, for some of these, if you're close enough with that friend, and after a couple of times, I feel like you really start to understand that they actually do. There's a reason why they want to
Yeah,
spend time with you. It's because they care about you. And so I
yeah.
think that's a really cool revelation for Harry.
Yeah, that's a great point because I feel the same. I feel like a nuisance sometimes when I'm with some friends, but it's like no, they want to be with you. They want to like hang out and do stuff with you. It's like a pleasure for them too. So it's kind of awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like I bought my house 2 years ago. Um, and it has like a spare room, so I set it up as a guest room. But I haven't had anyone to stay with in there yet because like when my siblings come home, they always stay with my parents.
Yeah,
So my friend texted me last week. She's like, "Hey, I'm like coming up for a night. Like, I don't want to invite myself to stay with you, but I could stay." And I was like, "Oh my god, yeah! Like finally,
yeah.
this room has been waiting for you for 2 years." So you're definitely like, yes, please
I
come.
love that. That's awesome. Break in the
Yeah, I
room.
was yeah. I also have I have a whole library room too, so
Ooh, I'd
like
I'd
yeah,
rather
that
stay in
was
that room than this
mm,
room. That's the cool room.
it's a great room.
Yeah,
It's a real fun room.
I've always wanted
I
that
also
like
like
floor to ceiling bookshelves. Like you have to go in, like the whole room is a bookshelf. If you like close the door, there's like a bookshelf on the back of the door.
mhm. You're just like shut into books forever.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
How did you guys
I
like?
also like. Oh, sorry. Go
No, go
ahead.
ahead. Your move.
Oh, I was just gonna say like this is a little bit before the Burrow, but I love Fred and George with like the hairpin trick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how they just they always have a plan for everything. They don't need to, in this case, worry about like the magic, and they teach Ron how to do it because
Yeah.
Ron gets Hedwig out of her cage without using magic,
Yeah.
and like Harry, they must teach him at some point because Harry uses it for something,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember what it is, but he uses it um in a book or two. So, and then it totally just comes like around again in like Weasley's Wizard
Yeah.
Wheezes, which is also like when the in the Burrow chapter when it says there's like always explosions coming from the twins' room. They're like making their stuff.
Yeah. It really is.
They're like,
Again, the more and more I read this, the more and more I am more impressed with Fred and George. Like I think you brought this up even the last time we were talking, which I it always went over my head for why they actually used like Muggle magic here, and it's so like Harry doesn't have to deal with underage magic because if like the pings are going off at his house, he's gonna get another howler from someone and he's gonna be expelled from school. So
mhm,
like they're coming, and they at least like they're going in kind of guns a blazing, but they have a good plan where they're like, okay, when we go, we can't use magic because this is gonna send off red flags. And then they know they have enough wherewithal to say, okay, let's go through this house. We have the skills. Let's pick these locks. Let's get all Harry's stuff. Let's do it quietly and then let's like get him out. It's like for what this is worth, I think it's a great plan. I think the twins kind of have everything going. Like Ron is like the impetus. He's like, all right, let's go do this. And the twins are like, let's sit down and let's think about this and let's actually like, really hammer this out.
mhm. Although I think their plan for actually explaining how Harry got there wasn't that
Yeah,
great.
for sure. Yeah.
Pretty sure Mrs. Weasley was gonna see through. Look who showed up.
Yeah. They didn't think that far.
And she
They're not afraid to get in
was gonna fall
trouble.
for
Yeah. And I was
that.
thinking
But
about this too, because when I was going through this chapter, I was like, in the fifth book, it's like almost a bummer that the twins leave right before Harry chooses to go to the Ministry of Magic. When he's on his way to the Ministry of Magic, he should like send them a quick owl, be like, "Hey, meet us here because we're going guns ablazing. We need a good plan. We need to like very, um, like, they're quick thinking wizards.
mhm.
And if they came, it would have been fun to just see how like things changed.
And they're so creative too. Like
Mm,
the way that they problem solve
mm,
is really creative.
yeah,
Like Ginny said, if you grow up with Fred and George, you start thinking that anything is possible.
yeah, it's awesome. I love
Thank
that.
you.
It's a great like business owner mindset too. Like that's kind of what they're doing. They're like the weapons contractors
Mhm.
even. They're like finding little solutions for things, and they're just creating it, and it's a great business like mindset.
Yeah, and just on the topic of picking locks, I mean, they were saying that we feel like this skill could be really useful, down the road or something, so we learn how to do it.
Hmm.
It made me think about wizards and their hand skills. I wonder if they have some, they don't necessarily have the best hand skills because I mean they're just swishing their wand
Hmm.
everywhere. They maybe not. Maybe they don't fidget with little small things, build things. I feel like they just kind of just use magic to do everything. I
Yeah,
feel like they might lose that kind of thing.
they don't have
Like
the
I'm thinking in
dexterity.
terms of like, if you, for example, people who apply, I mean, who are dentists, they're
Hmm.
supposed to have, really good hand skills because they're maneuvering in a
Hmm.
small area in somebody's mouth. I feel like, they might not have that kind of,
Extra
what's the word?
fine motor skills.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That extra fine motor skills to do that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe it's not necessary to have, but I feel like if you're tinkering like the Weasleys are, maybe it might be better to just to work with your hands to build something instead of relying on your wand. Maybe
that's fascinating. Actually, yeah. It.
because
I
yeah,
wonder how much. Well, I was just thinking, sorry about that. How much did Mr. Weasley put the car back together with his hands
Hmm.
versus using his wand? Because
yeah,
I feel like sometimes he could have just been like reparo, and it like all the stuff that was charmed would have just gone back.
Hmm.
But if he put it back together, but he still can't understand a plug, I don't know.
I
He
feel like
must have done some of it with his hands.
there's got to be some kind of spectrum too. Like the Reparo seems to me, I don't think every spell is like this, but I think a good number of them are like this. Where like Reparo seems like if you do Reparo and your wand movement isn't exactly how it should be, it maybe repairs less good than someone who repairs something. I don't know if that's really true though. I feel like the books don't really lend near to that, but in my head, that's kind of how it is. So like maybe
That makes
the finer motor skills that you have to do the exact wand motion of what it is, the better repairing job you're gonna do. So like maybe Mr. Weasley isn't worried about like the perfect repair job. He just does a quick like flick of his wrist and it works. But I don't think that's really how it works, because there's some people who are described to have like a lazy flick of their wand. Like in the sixth book, I was just listening to some of the parts of the sixth book, and it's like the twins. Ron throws a knife at the twins because he like they force him to cut stuff with like an actual knife rather than using magic. And it says with like a lazy flick of his wrist, Fred just like turned it into a paper airplane or something like that. And I love the idea of like a lazy flick of something. Like they're so good at magic, they just a lazy flick is all it takes. But I don't know if we've ever seen like a spectrum like that. But in my head, it's kind of like that.
Maybe
yeah.
something where, like, when Tonks is helping Harry pack his room, and she does the pack,
Mm-hmm.
and all the stuff just goes into his trunk, and
Yeah.
but it's all like a tangled mess, and she's like, my mom is better at these. Like, she can get everything to fold
Mm.
itself and go in all neatly. She has like an extra little flick that she can do,
Yeah.
but this will just have to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of like where that idea came from, because I
Yeah.
think that sounds like what you're describing.
Because for Tonks, for Tonks, I always seemed that it was like almost like a personality trait. Like maybe it wasn't a flick of the wand, but maybe that makes more sense that it's just like the right wand movement or something like that.
Hmm.
Because I always thought that line was just Tonks just didn't care that much about cleanliness, so she just whipped it all
Hmm.
together, and it's like how she would make it. Harry would kind of do the same thing. I'm sure Hermione's would be all neat and proper, and Ron's would kind of be a mess too. But
Yeah, yeah.
that's fascinating
Well,
though.
yeah, that's kind of like, yeah, because Tonks doesn't care that much. She's
Yeah.
not gonna like try to get the full
Yeah.
like perfection thing. I don't know, but it
Oh,
would be so great to have that spell in my life.
oh my gosh, I know. I know.
In real life
That'd be the one I
would
need
be the
most.
best.
Yeah, I feel like with Reparo, I've always thought that when you say the words, you also need to kind of know how to
Hmm.
put it back together, because I feel like
Hmm.
it doesn't make sense in my mind that you can just repair something without knowing how it works or how you put it back together. Like there's that scene in Hogwarts Legacy where the professor he like fixes that bridge in the intro
Hmm.
scene,
Yeah.
and it's just this massive bridge and it's all getting fixed. I'm like, did you really know how to
Yeah.
make a
Right.
bridge? I mean, this thing has been broken for however long, and then you put it back together. How
Yeah.
does that work? I don't understand. But
Because that that's fascinating too, because the vanishing cabinet. I would be really curious to see what Draco did to mend the vanishing cabinet. It has like
Mhm.
repercussions on certain things for what magic actually looks like. If you're doing something and he actually needs to know how the vanishing cabinet works, like the inner workings of it. So he's really studying this thing so that when he does actually use the Reparo charm, it can mend itself. That's a fascinating idea actually.
yeah,
I
so that might
wonder.
actually support the. Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking if it's similar or not to what Slughorn and Dumbledore did when they cleaned up the mess that Slughorn made,
Yeah, seriously, yeah.
when which was actually one of the few things that I really liked in a movie adaptation. I thought
Yeah,
that
me
looked
too.
really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And I like how Dumbledore at the end goes, "That was fun." That seems very Dumbledore to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, the one
Yeah, yeah.
time.
The one
The
time
one
he
time
nailed
jump.
it. Yep.
Ugh.
But yeah, I love the idea that wizards don't have the same dexterity as muggles. That we'd be better dentists than them. And I
We'll just
love the
ask Ron.
yeah, exactly, yeah. I love the rescue mission that they went on to. That was one of my favorite parts of this chapter. Even just the beginning of this book.
Mhm.
The end of the last chapter into the beginning of this chapter. It's just so fun. It's so great.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that flying car in front of the window, I mean, we haven't seen to this point, we haven't seen too many different types of magical transport. We've seen brooms, and then
Yeah.
we've seen, I mean, that's pretty much it, right? And I think
Hmm.
brooms are pretty entrenched in, even just Muggle lore that, witches and wizards, they ride on brooms. So I feel like that would be, even it's kind of crazy. Oh, you can fly on this little thin thing. I feel like seeing a car flying in the air would see a lot more surreal than a
Yeah.
broom.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you too. Like you can fake a broom. You can't fake a car flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel it's like overall like one of the more magical things that we have seen
Mm,
because like you said, like we're used to the idea of a broomstick flying, or like if you have read like fantasy, like okay, an ogre makes sense or something like that. But um yeah, a flying car in a muggle neighborhood is
mm.
definitely like oh,
Yeah.
especially with your best friend in it who's
Yeah.
flown across the country to get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think what it is treading the line of modern inventions with magic. Like for example, with the Deluminator, being able to turn up a street light with this little thing and sucking the light. I feel like that would seem so surreal, just like how
Mhm.
this car is. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's a great point. That I think through that a lot. Well, not like a ton, but like what kind of magic would seem really weird to me versus what kinds would be kind of normal. And that's one like seeing a flying car. That's like sending red flags over the entire, all of London. Rather than like it doesn't make sense to me. I hate that they put this, but in the fifth movie when they're like flying on broomsticks all over London and no one really catches them or cares, and they're like flying by, like the the ship and then by
yeah,
Hmm.
Westminster or whatever it is. It's like they're flying through all the streets of London and they're no one cares about it. But they get seen in a car and everyone.
Or when Hagrid and Harry are riding upside down in a tunnel
Yeah,
on a
yeah, yeah.
motorcycle.
Yeah, that was wild.
Totally real. And Harry even runs on top of the bus.
Yeah, I know. He would break his legs. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be gone.
Tear an
Wow.
ACL right there.
Mm,
Um,
ouch.
but this is the part of the chapter that I love the most is when they're at the Burrow and they're like just hanging out and relaxing. And even though Mrs. Weasley, she like sets everyone else on a task and she's like, "Oh, Harry, go upstairs and get some rest." He's like foregoing rest because he just wants to hang out and like look at
Hmm.
everything that the Weasleys have, like denome the garden, which is probably a really boring task for Fred and George and for Ron, but it's something that Harry like really wants to participate in and is excited about. I love it too because it's just such a great bit of writing because you're kind of in the same position as Harry in the entire thing.
Hmm.
You're just thinking like, I just want to see everything about the Burrow, and you get to live it through Harry, who's the same exact way. He's so like entranced with magic still, and I love it. It just hasn't gotten old to him.
yeah,
Man, how can it ever get old? But like, and Fred and George like make it into a game too,
Yeah,
where they're like, you know, how far they can get it over the
yeah,
hedge and
yeah.
things like that. Didn't seem like they were that upset about getting sent off to
Mm,
go do it.
yeah. And
Although
yeah,
it was pretty funny at like their lines when Mrs. Weasley first came out and morning mom, like the way she wrote that is really funny.
yeah,
Just another example of how great she is at just describing things.
it's one of my favorite
She's funny.
descriptions when she walks across. It says, "It's remarkable how much she looked like a saber-toothed tiger." It's a great line.
For a kind faced woman.
Yeah, yeah, yep. um,
Yeah.
yeah,
The way Fred goes, the plan has not gone off.
yeah, he knows.
They got caught. Oh, I guess we've
yeah.
all been there at some point.
I like the point that you brought up about how Harry doesn't go to sleep so that he can experience the entire house.
Mm,
I personally kind of experienced that when I think I live in I used to live in like a very suburban area. Every house is kind of the same, and the house isn't super interesting and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go visit some family in China, and in Shanghai, some distant relative of ours has just had this like massive villa house, with like 4 floors and a basement, and they had like a whole game room, and I was just completely just starstruck by this entire
Yeah.
place. So I was jet lagged like hell, but I
Yep.
but I just took the whole day to just explore every nook and cranny of that place, and I hadn't seen anything like it, or honestly seen anything since. So
And
yeah.
Sounds incredible.
it's like it's almost the same when you're a kid. It's so boring when, well, not boring, but it's like more boring when friends come over your house and when you go over a friend's house. Like I still remember me and Danny, because we were like childhood friends. Danny would come over my house and he'd be like so entranced with everything. He's like, let's go, into the backwoods over there. And I'd be like, that's boring. I don't want to do that. Like I've already seen all this stuff. And then he was the same. When I went over his house, he had so much fun stuff to explore. And I was like, let's go do this and this. And he's like, all right, fine, let's go do it. And one thing that I love in the series so much too is how it kind of describes Dumbledore as having this like childlike sense of wonder still about magic. And it's one of my favorite qualities of Dumbledore is that magic has not seemed to gotten old for him. He still seems to take delight in it, and he still seems to really love some of the things that he does, which this is again one of the chapters that really leads into it. Like Harry hasn't lost that yet. He almost will lose it, I feel like, toward the end of the book. Like I think he still has some of the childlike sense of wonder, but I love so much that Dumbledore is doing magic and he's like still having fun doing it. Rather than in the movie, his like portrayal is like almost like a grump. Like he still has wonder about it, but um, it's in the smallest things, like when he yells rather than does magic to quiet the students. I'm like, Dumbledore likes doing magic so much, and he like takes so much delight in it. That's the way he wants to quiet students, rather than like make his voice really loud and yell at the students for them to be quiet.
Yeah, and he would never scream at them anyway.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Like,
Yeah. That's a whole nother point. We will get into all the Dumbledore hate very soon. But
yeah, no, I that is one of my favorite things about his sense of humor, just like the way he teases people, but it's
Mm,
never like meant like maliciously,
mm,
Like, he's just always like finds the perfect tone of joking but lighthearted, but also like that he's not saying that because he doesn't
mm.
like you or something
Yeah.
like that. Like he's like one of those, like, I'm a teacher and there's some kids that I can tease and I know they're gonna like take it the way that I mean it. And then I
Yeah.
know that there's other kids like I I just have to, not, because they'll probably cry.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. Know your audience. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And Dumbledore is like a master at
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um, a point on the gnome stuff. Uh, I find it interesting that the gnomes speak English, and I'm curious about these magical creatures,
Yeah.
and some of them speak English and some of them speak a different language. And so, do they speak a different language in like France? Do they speak French? And is that who did they learn from? Did they learn from the people that they're surrounded with? Like,
Mm,
why did they pick up English in the first place? Yeah, I'm very intrigued by that, because we've seen other couple other creatures that speak English, right? We see
yeah.
sphinxes and
Mm-hmm.
some other ones maybe, but yeah, that was just intriguing to me.
Yeah. Like a Sphinx speaking English doesn't make a ton of sense to me too, because I'm sure I think
They're
it
from
talks
Egypt.
about, yeah, I think it talks about they had
Mhm.
to import a Sphinx from Egypt or something like that. They had to do the dragons, but the dragons aren't talking. So the Sphinx, I mean, a Sphinx seems very wise and smart, so maybe it knows,
Mhm.
all the languages, can adapt the language
Right.
as soon as it comes to a country, maybe. But like maybe it should be speaking, like
It's like
Arabic.
the TARDIS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And it's like a field that just automatically translates all the languages all the
yeah,
time for you.
yeah. Yeah, seriously.
I'm going with
Because what other creatures have their own language?
Like goblins and trolls apparently,
Yeah, that's
and
true. Yeah,
mer people
mer
yeah.
people. Yeah.
and giants.
Do mer people have their own language, or is it that you just can only hear them underwater?
I think Murmish is what they call
Oh,
the.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think like
Because
Murmish
Dumbledore
was
seems to be
listed as
speaking
one
with
of
it.
the
Yeah.
ones Dumbledore spoke.
Yeah.
Mm,
Then you have Gobbledygook.
yeah.
Great names for the languages. Yeah, that's actually interesting. I would be curious to see like a French house elf or like a French gnome and see if they actually are speaking French or if they have to learn language. I'm sure it's like whatever country they grew up in, they get accustomed to it. And I feel like their vocabulary is probably very small. Like gnomes probably only know like, what they pick up from, the places that they're in, I guess. So
I
Yep,
wonder
and the
where
curse
they
word,
learn "get off me." Where did they
yeah.
learn that?
Yeah, for sure.
and the curse words Fred and George teach him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Honestly.
yeah,
That's actually a
um,
fascinating one. Because that's
yeah, yeah.
John Voth does the centaurs are Italian, so maybe the centaurs are coming from Italy and they only speak Italian
That's true.
because
That's
their
true.
names are so Italian.
That's true. Oh yeah, with Ferenz. It's so funny. I always thought it was like Ferenz. No, I
Yeah.
never like put the E on it in my head.
Yep. Me too.
But
And
because I think like in Italian, it's more like Firenze, if
yeah,
anything, than Firenze.
yeah.
But
And that was always funny because in the movie, Hagrid says hello to him and he goes hello friends. And for the longest time, I thought that line was he was talking friends, like that these guys are
mhm,
his friends rather than that's his actual name. It took me a long time to pick that up.
yeah, sometimes Hagrid almost speaks a different language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I will say he does know how to spell happy birthday. They did
mm,
Hagrid so dirty in that
yeah,
first movie.
yeah. Don't even get me started on that line. Terrible.
And now it's like everywhere. Like if you like, if you have like a Pottermore account or whatever and they like
Hmm.
send you stuff, it's like happy birthday.
Yeah. Go by the books. Hagrid knows how to spell. He got an education up to his, third year.
Yes.
Please.
And I think it's because when he says he can't spell Voldemort, but if you think about it,
Hmm.
where would he have learned to spell Voldemort?
Yeah. He
That's
would
not
never have
like
seen it. Yeah.
he never would have seen it written
Hmm.
ever because they don't say it, they don't write it,
And some people say
and it,
Voldemort. Some people say Voldemort. You don't know if there's a silent T at the
yeah,
end or not. I'd
yes,
be
exactly.
confused of how to spell it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's like that doesn't make him stupid at all. So
Agreed. Fully agreed.
that peeve of many.
Yep. It's also interesting to me what kind of magical power gnomes have. They just seem like a household pest almost. But I'm like, I love like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is just such an interesting study for me, and I just don't know what kind of magical power they possess, and I just want to learn more about that because I'm like, maybe it would have been small, but why didn't they recruit the gnomes to fight for them? Why didn't the beacons of Gondor go out for all the gnomes in the world to fight against Voldemort? And would they have fighted? Whose side would they have chosen? If they chose a side, I don't know if they really would have chosen a side. And maybe they're just like deemed as creatures that their magical power is so insignificant that it doesn't even matter, which is kind of like what the book seemed to imply. But you even talk about like because Danny was on this for a while about house elf magic seeming to be like very very strong, and in the books, I mean the movies especially, but in the books too, house elf magic seems to be like very underwritten, very like it's
And they
incredibly
don't need
powerful.
wands.
Yeah, they don't need wands. They're doing stuff like in the I mean at least in the movies, Dobby is like blasting Lucius Malfoy like out of the scene. He's like very very powerful for certain things that he does, and his like yeah even just the ability to apparate. Maybe that his ability to apparate is because they're deemed as so less that they can kind of they haven't even made up the rules for that, but that's interesting to me. So I don't know. Like
well, we know for sure, like lore accurate, that Gernumbly saliva is extremely powerful.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you
Yes.
know, so if they were onto that, think about all the saliva they could have collected over
Mm,
7 years. I mean, that
yeah,
stuff could have come
Right?
in handy.
I know.
That could have come in
It's
handy.
like rather than bees, you have gnomes, and like every day you have to go out and like desalivate the gnomes, get jars of it. the,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Weasleys are selling that on the black market.
That's- It's too bad we never found out what special skill Luna gained after the Gernumbly bit her
Yeah, I
at
know.
Claire's wedding.
Exactly. That'd be so fun. Yeah, she
Yeah.
has what was it? The ability to sing. If you feel like
Yeah,
you
like if you,
want to
or
break
I
out in
think another one
song,
was like Declaim and Murmish, wasn't it?
it might have been something like that. I actually forgot. I remember
Yeah.
the singing ability, but if it
Yeah.
maybe it gives you the ability to speak in other languages. That'd be pretty crazy. And maybe that
Yeah.
explains why they're
Maybe that's
actually able
how
to
Barty
speak in other
Crouch did
languages.
it.
Yeah, honestly.
But like had a bunch of gnomes bite him.
Yeah, he just had a bunch of
But it
gnomes in his pocket. Every time he just brought one out, it bit
yeah.
him, and he was able to speak in another language.
Yeah. Wait, so okay, that makes me think that Voldemort actually knew about this and he
Hmm.
utilized it with, he employed his Death Eaters to go rally up all the Acromantula and all the giants and stuff. And why was he able to do it so well? Well, it's
Yeah,
because they had all the saliva and he could, talk more effectively to these spiders and these giants. I mean, I think
yeah,
the answer's obvious now.
that's
Could
actually
totally
great
translate.
because
Yeah.
Aragog's the only one that can speak English, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe, and especially like if you go to another country, you want to speak the mother tongue, or if you go to another like species, you want to speak the mother tongue in order to better
Yeah.
recruit them. So maybe the key for this whole thing is gnome saliva, and we never knew
Yeah.
it. I love that. That's headcanon for me now. I'm gonna make a video about that. Gnome saliva is the key for everything.
Yeah.
The one kind of ancient magic that Voldemort could figure out.
Hmm. I love that. They. Hmm. I like that a lot. Um, who is your favorite Weasley in this chapter?
Mr. Weasley.
Yeah.
I love Mr. Weasley. I think it's so cute how like when he gets home from work, everyone like goes and runs, like Dad's home, and
Yeah.
they like all go and run into the kitchen, and he like loves Harry to sit by him, and he's soft on the Jernumblies because he thinks they're funny, and
Yeah.
he's just so great. I
Yeah.
love Mr. Weasley. He fights Mr. Malfoy.
Yep.
he's I love Mr. Weasley. He's great. He his reaction when Molly tells him that the boys flew the car, and he's like, "Oh, did it go okay?"
Yeah. That's my favorite line in the whole
The
chapter. I'll say
best
that later, but
moment.
he
So
really
good.
he really is one of my favorite characters in the whole series because he's like such a gentle person with his family and everyone else that he loves. He's like such a good, funny dad. He's like a great guy, but he knows when to stand up for what's right and when to like really not back down for certain things. And that's like a great
Mhm.
quality to have. Like it's like almost the wrath of a gentle man. It's like I'd be afraid if I was one of the Weasleys because even the twins said that the only time they've ever seen him get as angry as Mrs. Weasley was when the twins tried to do an unforgivable, or no, they tried to do a
Oh, the unbreakable vow on
unbreakable vow
Ron.
on
Oh yeah.
Ron,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they say I think Fred's left buttocks never recovered or something like that. Which
Yeah,
is
what does
such a
that
great,
mean?
yeah, yeah. We'll break that down in book 7 or book 6, wherever it is. But for him to be that, and for them to never see his anger, and then all of a sudden it comes out that flourish and blast in the next chapter, I'm sure they were probably a little bit shocked by it. I'm sure they're like, we don't want to cross this guy because we know he can get there. We know he like stands up for what's right. But he's one of my favorite characters. I love him so much.
the his dearest ambition is to find out how airplanes stay up, and he calls Mrs. Weasley Molly Wobbles.
Yeah, yeah. What more do you need? That's all you need.
He just wins everything
Yeah,
right there.
yeah. He's so great.
That's so funny.
Yeah, he truly is a
Yeah.
great guy.
I think, speaking on some of the other Weasleys, I think it's interesting the characterization that we get for both Percy and Ginny. I think we learn a little bit about Percy and his, maybe his
Hmm.
softer side. And so I think that's interesting because I don't know if Harry gets to see that very much at Hogwarts, and he's locked
Hmm.
away and he's doing something mysterious, and
Yeah,
so yeah. Uh,
Did you notice they asked Percy to go play Quidditch with them? Which means he must have done at some point like he must have they've grown up playing Quidditch with them.
Yeah.
They didn't ask Ginny because they're punk brothers, I
Yeah,
guess.
agreed. Yeah.
But which but she didn't need them because she could just sneak in and
Hmm.
steal their brooms one at a time.
I love that she
But
made Ginny really good at Quidditch. That's one of my favorite additions to this book because like
mhm,
she's out home like practicing every
yeah,
day, you know, like getting better. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden she comes out and has a breakout year and she's like the best player
yeah.
on the team. I love that so much.
And they have no idea.
Yeah.
None of them.
Percy kind of seems like he's definitely played before. He almost just seems like the body that they needed. Like they didn't want to ask Ginny because, you know, she's the youngest sister. Percy probably would have been a little better than Ginny at this moment, but I love that Percy just didn't want to because he's like, you know, in his room occupied with other things. It seems very, very like a Percy move to make. Um,
He'd rather reread Penelope's letter for the
yes.
17th time.
Yeah. And
Right, her other one.
honestly, that it's like one of the most side story things in the whole series, but that is one of the things that I wanted to know more than anything else is what really happened between them. I'm sure that they
Hmm.
kind of had a falling out. I don't know if maybe Penelope thought he was going down a dark path and like was it almost the same thing? I don't want to make this comparison because Percy's much different from Snape, but was it kind of the same thing with like a Snape and Lily kind of thing where there was like not okay that it is very different because I mean there seems to be genuine love between Penelope and between Percy, like some kind of flirtation going on. But was there a moment where she was like, Percy, I can't keep following you down this path that you're going on? Or did she follow him all the way to the ministry? And was she just like a really underwritten character that no one really knew? And I would be so curious to know that because he seems so smitten with her at this moment. He's like, he's very ambitious. He's pursuing his career. He's like, seems very, very into what he's doing, but he also seems very into her.
Yeah. I always kind of assumed that it was like more one of those just high school relationships that doesn't last after high school.
Mm,
Like, most of them don't, or the ones that they try to, they eventually kind of peter out
yeah.
naturally after a year or two. Um, but yeah, I Percy is so interesting because he
Mm,
definitely like my favorite Percy moments are actually like in the fourth book
mm-hmm.
when he like after Ron comes out of the lake, he is like clearly freaking out
Yeah.
about Ron.
It's one of his best
And
moments.
yeah, it's so like so it's there, like he loves and cares for his family a lot.
Mm,
He, you know, he just has a different way of thinking about things.
yep.
And he's clearly born that way
Mm-hmm.
because, that's just who he is. So after growing up in that house, if that's still the way he is, that's just the way he is.
Yeah.
So to still come around and learn to like see his own mistake when that's very against his nature is pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and he got one more OWL than Hermione did. This kid has to
Yeah.
be next level
So
smart.
did he have a time turner?
Yeah, that's my thought too. Like
And
I think that
and
changes a lot of
Bill
the
and Barty
series.
Crouch?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
'Cause Bill had 12 too,
Yeah.
right? And Barty Crouch,
Yeah.
which probably makes it like a little like more understandable that Hermione would get one
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
that must be a thing.
Hmm.
Like the ministry must do that. That like
Hmm.
okay, yeah, that's a thing we can do.
Yeah. It almost seems
'Cause
like
I
they would do
remember.
that once a year for the top student in that class to see if they want to take on
Mhm.
more of a course load. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to equate it to, but it would almost be like a junior minister kind of position, like in the school. Like we're priming you to be really like we see there's a good potential in your future. We see there's a lot of good stuff that you can do. This is like something that we give only to one student per year in their third year to really see like how they can manage this and how they can deal with the stress. And I would have loved to see if Percy got that. I feel like he had to have. Now, it's not out of the question that he didn't
Must
get
have.
one, but I feel like he had to have. Like I'm pretty convinced that he got one in his third year and was just cranking out all the coursework.
It's That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, because there weren't that many classes at Hogwarts to be at different times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like one of the defining characteristics of Percy is obsession, uh,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I can definitely see that he I mean, for example, with Penelope, I'm sure he met her in the library. I mean, she's a
Mm-hmm.
Ravenclaw, so I think that
Yeah.
kind of makes a lot of sense. And then his obsession over her in this moment as like maybe his first young or a first love or a young love. I can definitely see that,
Mm.
keeping him in his room all the time, just thinking about that. But I can also see, when it comes to Quidditch and practicing in the backyard, maybe before school he was obsessed with Quidditch as well, and he played a lot because
Yeah.
I think to create even numbers, I mean, you have to have all the boys play if Ginny isn't going to play. So
Mm.
I can definitely see Percy, looking up to his brothers and seeing, wow, they're really good at Quidditch. I'm going to learn how to do it, And
Yeah.
so but then once he got into school, and he found that there were other paths, he, decided to take on those. He
Yeah.
seems like a very one-track mind person, where if he has one thing that he wants to do, he'll just focus on that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 100% with you. It. Have you guys seen the movie Whiplash?
I have not, but I'm going to be seeing it on the 20th when it comes back in
Nice.
theaters.
Love that. It's a great movie, but I won't spoil anything. But there's like a decision that a character has to make between doing one thing or the other, and he like forsakes one thing to make like he's like I can't do that anymore. You have to only focus on this. And it seems very like Percy-esque. Like he will get rid of all other distractions in his life so he can really focus on this one thing. Like maybe that was a sacrifice. Maybe he was like an incredible Quidditch player, but really he realized that he was smarter than he was athletic. Because I mean, like, yeah, athleticism can like skip a brother or two here and there, but Bill and Charlie were great Quidditch players apparently, and all of a sudden Percy comes along and is like, I can't imagine him not being good at it. He has more confidence than Ron. Ron is good, but he just has confidence issues. I feel like Percy would be very good at that, but he's just choosing his priorities. He's very like one track minded on certain things.
What would he have been, a chaser
He's
or a
tall, right?
beater?
So
I
probably chaser, right? Or as a keeper.
I almost think a seeker. I
Mhm.
feel like he could be a good seeker. Maybe he's too tall for that, but
He
I
seems a
don't
little
know.
big, but
Yeah,
maybe that's fun.
yeah, because in the book the description is he's taller than the I think taller than the twins. The twins are a little shorter in the
Yeah,
books.
like Ron and Percy are like tall and lanky.
Yeah.
Charlie and the twins are like short and stocky.
Hmm. And Bill is just a
And I
werewolf.
guess
Bill is
Bill's
just
maybe
so
tall.
cool.
Yeah,
Bill's
yeah,
cool. He'll have a dragon earring.
yeah,
That's
Dragon
the only
finger.
description. Don't need any height, anything. He's just so cool.
I
Um,
love that that's what Rowling chose to like prove that he was cool, was
yeah,
the earring
yeah. Yep, it's so funny.
and long hair. The
Yeah,
earring and long hair. Every mother's worst nightmare in the 90s, I'm sure.
yeah. Kids going down a dark path that they got long hair and a
Ugh.
fang earring. But Percy is one of the most interesting characters to me. I have hated him.
Mhm.
In, like my first 10 readings of the book, he was one of my least favorite characters. I hated him. I like there was a time when I placed him as my least favorite person in the entire series. And he's bumped
Wow.
up way since then because I think he's just a really fascinating character. And it's really interesting that he got sorted into Gryffindor rather than Slytherin. I feel like he would have done very well in Slytherin because he's so ambitious.
Mhm.
But I also think, like, this is kind of my headcanon too, that he was kind of like a Harry or a Hermione. Like he was given the option. The Sorting Hat was like, you would do incredible in Slytherin, but he chose Gryffindor because at that point he was very loyal to his family and he didn't want to like leave the family tradition of all being Gryffindors, even though it was just his two older brothers. I think he felt that pressure, so I think he chose Gryffindor rather than Slytherin and just went ahead on that path. It would have been fascinating to see this is the one change that I want in the books if I were to make one single change is it that the Weasleys would have a squib child somewhere in the mix. But I also would love to see Percy be a Slytherin and see how that changes the books at all. Like, because
Oh
maybe
man, Fred and
initially,
George would be even more mean to him.
yeah, seriously, I know there'd be like a lot of animosity in that house toward Percy, but maybe it'd soften our opinions of Slytherins for a long time
Mhm.
until he turns his back on his family. Then we're like, oh, typical Slytherin, And then when he comes back, it could be a really good redemption moment for Slytherins where they're like, yeah, they're really ambitious, but when push comes to shove, like he's a loyal person, and that's definitely a quality of Slytherin as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
Well,
know. I do wish she had given us like at least one Slytherin that stayed
yeah,
or
I agreed.
something other
Yeah.
than Slughorn.
Yeah, agreed.
yeah, that's true. There aren't any other ones that stayed, huh?
No, they're locked in the
Yeah.
Other than
dungeons.
Draco.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. I suppose.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like your opinion on Percy's rising, but it might decline after I say this. It's a very
Yes.
true possibility that after Penelope got petrified, Percy, he was sad at first, but after a while he was like, maybe this is a good thing, and he just really doubled down in his
Yeah.
studying, and
Yeah.
that allowed him to get all those just the really high scores next year. It's very
Yeah,
possible.
absolutely. It was like his lab moment. He was like glad to be rid of her, and he was like, finally, she's petrified. I can get back to
And
studying.
Ken.
Yeah. All
Oh,
right, now
I was
I don't like him
thinking
so much anymore.
that's whole. What I was thinking is like what you were saying about like the Quidditch. Like, okay, when he got to school, he's like, okay, I've got to focus on Quidditch. And then after Hogwarts, he's like, okay, I can't focus on a girlfriend right now. I just need to focus on my job.
Hmm.
Like, so maybe that's what happened with them.
Hmm.
Yeah, he had a new relationship with Crouch, so I think he had his
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Get a new obsession to
he had
follow.
his quota full. Yeah, his quota was full at that point.
That is so fascinating
Oh,
because
talk about it.
it really meshes with his personality well. Like I could imagine again him coming as a first year. And this is another question that I have, and this has nothing to do with this chapter. Well, it has something to do with Quidditch, but in the first book it says first years aren't allowed to um, uh, bring brooms, and because they're not allowed on the Quidditch teams. They take that rule back in Harry's first year, obviously, but do they take that back? They take it back for the rest of the series because in Harry's sixth year, there's a bunch of first years that come and try out for the team.
Mm.
So,
I
and
always thought they just showed up to like be there.
yeah, I kind of thought the same thing too.
Harry was the new captain.
Yeah.
Oh, and then also I think they probably were using school brooms.
Okay, yeah. So they were using school brooms. Yeah, because I think it said all of them were using school brooms, and like none of them knew how to fly, which makes what Harry did even more remarkable. But that rule is a weird rule for me because I'm like they just changed that for Harry only. But was it was it a hard and fast rule, or was it just like one of those things that no first years ever make the teams, so they just kind of like put into motion as like students thought it was a rule? Because I'm like, if we're going back to this Percy thing, did Percy come his first year expecting to break this rule because he thought he was really good at Quidditch, and then when he realized the team was kind of already set and didn't want to join the team anymore, then he's like, let's forget about Quidditch. I'm only going to focus on academics. Again, we're making Percy out to be like an athlete when maybe he's just like not an athlete at all, but you never know. I love this theorizing stuff.
Doesn't Draco say, I feel like he said either on the train or somewhere that like one of the first things we hear him say is like, father says it's a crime if I don't make the team. And
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't make the
Yeah.
team.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't get the Harry treatment. And but he does the second year,
Yeah.
but it also at the price of 7 superb broomsticks.
Well,
Yeah.
So
Draco says a lot of things, so
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
And
I mean, he
Slytherins,
does almost get the snitch once.
yeah. Because
yeah, that's true.
who is the Slytherin seeker Harry's first year? Does it say who the guy's name is? It's not Montague, right? Montague is
Isn't
one
it
of the.
Heart or something?
It might be. For some reason, I have him in my mind as a third year. I don't know why, but I can't imagine like Draco coming
What
onto the
happened
team his
in the
next year.
Slytherin match? Which one was it?
That was when he.
Was it
No. Was that when he caught
Uh,
the snitch in his mouth? Was that his first ever Quidditch match? Was against Slytherin?
Yeah. Wait. No. Wait. Yes.
I
Yes.
think so.
Usually the first match is against Slytherin. I know the third year it wasn't because Draco like pretended that his
Yeah.
arm was hurt.
Yep.
So, and I know Flint was the captain.
Mhm.
I don't know if it says the Seeker.
It might not. Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember. I just think it's interesting. Unless the kid was a seventh year, the next year must have been a bit awkward because this kid all of a sudden gets booted off the team because all of a sudden this rich kid comes who maybe is a better flyer than him, but this rich kid comes and his father's like, if my son gets on the team, everyone gets a Nimbus 2001.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like one of those where like the team captain's like, bro, you gotta take one for the team. Sorry.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yep.
I think you'll understand.
Yeah. Yes.
According to this, it is Terrence Higgs. I've never heard of that before.
Huh.
So
Terrence Higgs. I remember
which
that.
is funny because I feel like I think they probably just didn't, I don't know if they've said it by name, but all the other players, they sound familiar to me.
Huh.
Interesting.
Random.
But yeah, I mean, you're thinking about, maybe Percy was thinking about breaking the rule. Maybe they changed the rule because of Percy.
Oh.
He was just he was a menace. He brought his broom, and he just after he didn't get on the team, he did something just crazy. Maybe he attacked somebody on the team, and
Yeah.
they're like, okay, never again. I mean, it's possible. Percy has he could have a dark past.
I like this.
Yeah.
I like this. Yeah.
For Percy.
All right. Do you guys have anything else in chapter 3?
I think just the talk about Jenny a little bit. I think it's interesting how Ron mentions that she never shuts up normally, whereas now she's shy. I think that it's cool because it really showcases that she's always been this like chatty, perhaps charismatic person.
Yeah.
But she just wasn't able to show that side for several years until she kind of got her footing, and she's kind of just let Harry go by the wayside.
Yeah,
cool.
for sure.
Yeah, I remember reading that like the first couple times, thinking like, oh, Ron, whatever. Ron's just saying that because that's his sister and he's gonna say that. Like, that's not really what Ginny's like, because obviously, like the Harry thing, but she actually is.
Yeah.
She's great. And I also think Harry's like so sweet about it. Like, he doesn't like make fun of her or embarrass her. Like, there's a couple of times he almost kind of like he could have like pointed out like when she put her elbow in the butter dish or whatever, and he doesn't, like he's very sweet about it, especially for what, a 12-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Like, he's definitely handles it better than a lot of kids his age would have, and I think he's pretty great about it.
It kind of feels, maybe this is like a stretch, that Harry almost has like a very, very, like where it says like the dragon in his belly or something like that in the later books whenever he talks to Ginny. It's like maybe that is really, really dormant in this book. And maybe the reason he doesn't make fun of her so much is because he actually thinks she's kind of cute, but maybe he wants to preserve it. Because maybe I like the idea more so that he's just a good person and he wouldn't like, outright embarrass a person like that unless he just absolutely loathes them like he does Draco. But maybe he has like a little crush on her at this moment too, and that's why he doesn't do it. But
he just doesn't realize it yet.
Yeah.
I think that would be so cute.
Yeah,
it would be, because it's like, after the first time of reading through everything, like she comes in and like, oh, it's Mrs. Potter, it's the future of Mrs. Potter.
Right.
Like, it's adorable.
Yeah, it is really cute.
Fun to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you know what they say? People say that you marry your mother, and so Harry didn't really have a mother, so I guess Mrs. Weasley's as close to that, and Ginny is very similar to Miss Weasley in a lot of ways. So
I feel like Ginny is actually very similar to Lily as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of like the red hair. Like Lily was supposedly like very popular, but also very kind.
Yeah,
which Ginny, like with Luna and stuff, Ginny can stand up for herself. So can Lily.
Yeah, and that's the difference. I think there's a line that both of them flirt on, and I think Ginny can sometimes present a little bit more as a mean girl than Lily does, because there's just outright moments where Ginny is like so confident that it's like almost abrasive, where like the way she talks to Ron later on in the books, I'm like, I love that you're sticking up for yourself, because Ron is being an absolute bimbo at this moment, but like that is like an intense thing that just happened. Whereas I don't know, my impression of Lily is because she felt so bad for Petunia, like kindness was her overflowing thing, even though she was super charismatic and super like outgoing, maybe not outgoing, but super kind toward everyone, and like could like give it to people. She was like she led with kindness rather than like her confidence, I think. But yeah, I think both of them are pretty similar of characters, if I'm being completely honest. It's a good comparison.
Yeah. I I like that.
Hmm.
I think it's cool. Like not the same enough so that it's like weird that Harry just
Yeah.
like married his mom,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
similarities that like her good qualities are there.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It just kills me. It's so sad. Poor Harry.
I know. I know.
Both his parents.
But this is where he meets his real family in the Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
Not his,
Yeah.
his real family in the books.
Yeah, and this chapter is very the knot is tied very well in this chapter when the last line is saying Harry saying this is the best house I've ever been in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and then with Ron's ears, I find it so funny that Ron's ears went pink is the last
Yeah.
line
Yeah.
in the chapter, but I think it again just strengthens their friendship.
Yeah. Fully agreed.
Yeah.
Fully agreed.
They're both giving each other what they need. Like Harry needs the family and the like belonging, and Ron, meanwhile, is like, it always cracks me up. Like he's like, it's not as big as the room you had with the Muggles. Like Ron, they put bars on his window. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that that's where he wants to be.
Yep.
It's okay.
Ron is the most like bimbo of a character sometimes. Like
He's so insecure.
Yeah.
So insecure.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. What's your guys?
And I will say, like, I love Fred and George, but I think they're a huge part of it. They can be
Oh yeah.
real mean sometimes.
Yep.
They are like they're just joking around, but sometimes maybe they don't realize that like they're being really mean.
Yeah. And it's funny because there are two characters that I think they're not the reason, but they're a contributing reason to why Percy is the way he is, to why Ginny is the way he is, and to why Ron is. Because like Percy almost gets annoyed with them, so he like distances himself from them. Ron just caves in because he doesn't know how to deal with the pressure, and Ginny like flourishes because their relationship with Ginny is different. They're a lot more protective of Ginny than they are with Percy and with Ron. Like with both of the boys, they're just like, messing around and they like make fun of him all the time. With Ginny, they're very, very protective of her, which is like really cute. I love that quality of them. But then Ginny is able to like flourish under that, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And she doesn't let it like, like when they are like, when are you or are you not going out with a boy named Dean Thomas,
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
Like, come on, you've been going to school with him for the last 6 years. You know exactly who Dean Thomas is.
Yeah.
Move along.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Wild.
So funny.
What's your guys'
They're
favorite line in this chapter? Unless if you had anything else in the chapter too, make mention of it. But
Oh, two things.
Mm-hmm.
What did Mortlake do to the ferrets?
Ooh.
That Mr. Weasley had to, like, that is one of the things that I wrote down. I wrote down Gilderoy Lockhart is the household pest. He doesn't need to write a book about him. He creates one.
Yeah, I love that. I mean,
then,
it's like quick writing, but she even like shows who Gilderoy Lockhart is in this chapter right before you meet him. It's good. Yep. Good little bits of writing.
Yep. But so I said, what did Mortlake do to the ferrets? Which reminds me, I really want to know what Aberforth did to the goats. I don't know if we'll ever find out.
Yeah. So she's given, someone asked her that in an interview once, and she asked the person who asked the question, she's like, how old are you? So it's probably something adult, but I have different theories about that whole thing. And they all kind of revolve around Ariana. And I think maybe it's just because I have some... It's just changed my opinions of who Albus Dumbledore is. Because I think he's making fun of his brother more and like fanning rumors into flame more than this is an actual reality. unless legitimately he's like, committing bestiality, which I'm like, I hope that's not the case, because like, what is really going on with this guy and goats? I don't know, but I think it has.
Well, his Patronus is a goat.
Mm-hmm.
And when Harry goes into the hog's head for the first time, he says it smells like goats.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
I think
But
it's connected with Ariana. Like, I have like loose working theories on this, but I think in some way, maybe again, because he's more of a nurturer, maybe Ariana had like an affinity. Like, she would go in and she was like, like Snow White. She was able to like wrangle up the animals, even though she was a little, she was kind of like a little cooped up. Um, her magic was kind of turning inward at this time, but maybe the only way that they were able to like really bond was over this like love of animals that they had, and they had a bunch of goats around, and maybe the reason, maybe Aberforth's Patronus actually changed. Maybe it was something before it was a goat, because of his like love for where they connected in this moment.
maybe it wasn't his charms on the goats. Maybe it was Ariana's.
Yes, yeah, agreed, yeah. And he's like just
He
trying to
just,
like fan this into flame. So like he has goats all around because like, it's like sensory. It's like the smells help him remember Ariana. It's
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
that's why he keeps so many goats around. That's why his
Yeah,
Patronus is a goat. And I feel like
I like it.
Albus maybe is, I don't think of him at this time of his life as like a petty person still, but maybe he's still a little bit bummed out that he wasn't able to like live his life of ambition. So he still fans these like little weird rumors into flame about like his weird obsession with goats. Or maybe Albus
Mhm.
just doesn't really understand what it is about, and so he just doesn't really
Yeah.
do anything about it. Yeah,
Yeah, well, bezoars come from the stomach of a goat, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
So
still.
maybe he found that getting the freshest bezoar, which
Yeah,
is you can only get the freshest bezoar while the goat is alive.
that's a
So
great. I love that. Yeah,
you got to find some way to reach inside, and so you don't you know
I love that. I love that. Yeah, he's trying to do anything that he can to find like an antidote to whatever she's going through.
exactly.
Mhm.
Mm. Trying to find the
I wonder if
purest.
Newt. I wonder if Newt knew. Newt knew. What's the? No, Ariana would have died before the events in. Oh, but Newt was out of school too. I was just like wondering what the timeline is
Hmm.
with Newt and the first Fantastic Beast movie and
I feel
what's
like,
his face, the Obscurus.
He maybe
Like I wonder if
wasn't born, or he was really young,
yeah,
yeah,
maybe he knew them somehow. I love the Newt connection to
perhaps.
this though. Newt is one of my favorite characters. I love him so much.
he's great. And Eddie Redmayne did such a good job with him.
Yeah, he
I
was.
think I just like him because of Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah,
He's
honestly,
just
Eddie
Mhm.
Redmayne
fantastic.
was
Yeah.
unbelievable. I was kind of bummed in the second and third movies of that series. He was like a little less of an important role. I just wanted
Mhm.
more Newt. I thought he was fantastic. It was so good.
I really liked his brother in the third one too.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought he was like I thought it was like one of those where you couldn't tell which way it was gonna go. Like was he gonna support Newt or not? And
Mm,
then he did. And like I always love that when the you know family
yeah,
sticks together or
yeah. I love
whatever.
it. Yeah.
So
All right. What are your guys' favorite lines in this chapter?
mine is actually the one about this is the best house I've ever been in
Yeah.
and Ron's ears going pink. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
so happy for Harry.
Yeah, Harry deserves
Yeah,
it.
I think that one's the one. And if not, it's Mr. Weasley.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
The
that whole conversation,
the
honestly.
Mr. Weasley line is my favorite. Where he goes, "Your
Yeah.
sons flew that car to Harry's house and back last night," shouted Mrs. Weasley. "What have you got to say about that, eh?" "Did you really?" said Mr. Weasley eagerly. "Did it go all right? I mean," he faltered as sparks flew from Mrs. Weasley's eyes. "That was very wrong. Boys, very wrong indeed."
Wrong. Indeed.
He's so great. I love him so much. All right. Well, thanks
He's a good
for,
dad.
yeah, he's such a good dad. Thanks for discussing chapter 3 with me, guys. That was fun.
Absolutely.